There's another very interesting Gemara at the beginning of Avodah Zarah, Masechet Avodah Zarah, the first mission of Avodah Zarah speaks about Yom Edom, the day of the disaster, and which is their so-called festival. So the Gemara into the huge Agada about the Achros HaYomim, the end of days. Mamash, well worth looking at, about how at the end of days all the nations come for the judgment before God. And there, the first nation, they're all coming to us and their reward. The first nation that steps forward is Edom. Guess who the second nation that steps forward is? Paras. Tosfos there on the page says that Paras is going to be around at the end of days. How do you know? 1,000 years ago, the author of that Tosfos, that Paras is going to be around right now. And the Gemara there also says that at the end of time, the Goyim will come forward wearing talis and tefillin. They'll all show how noble and righteous, what big tzaddikim we are. And the Gemara there says that the war of Gog and Magog is going to frighten away the frauds, and only the real Israel will be left. So this is a long drawn out process. And you commented earlier that life is a struggle, and we hope that we're going to see in our lifetimes the Beis HaMikdash. We hope, and we've always hoped that we can see it in a minute. But we also have to accept that we are God's servants, and that the Malach is very great, the Balabait is urgent, and Lo Alecho, it's not upon you to complete the labor. We're part of this. We're marching to Moshiach, and every one of God's soldiers will get the complete reward. Will be Zoyfer to see the Beit HaMikdash, and the Osher, and the Kavod, and the Shalom, and the beauty, and the Torah, and all the rivers of the Afarsimon will come. But we have to accept that the King alone will decide when it's going to be. We've got to fight. We are the fighters. We're God's fighters. And that's our job.
Did the public finally give a time frame for part 3?
Not that I know of.
Part 3 is as bad as parts 1 and 2. It's not very good to hear. Well, and unfortunately for Bruce Reason.
The beauty of
two was worse.
Except that the good news about
that's even worse. Right.
The good news about the war of Gog and Magog is that Israel comes out at the end with the victory. God gives the victory to Israel.
With Gog and Magog, you have like half of Jerusalem is annihilated. That's not a very happy thing.
Well, half of Jerusalem is annihilated right now. I mean, just go anywhere south of Rehov Yaakov in Jerusalem and go into those neighborhoods, and the kids are zonked out on everything except Torah, and it's a spiritual wasteland, and the city is literally divided. It's in recent years, the demographic shift in the city has been that north of Jaffa Street is black Jerusalem, and south of Jaffa Street, by and large, I mean there are exceptions, but by and large, south of Jaffa Street has become secularized, and these two worlds, in some ways, I mean, there's such a gap between them. That is what it means that the city is divided. It doesn't mean that physical devastation, these things are all expressed in prophetic metaphor and in riddles. And when we understand that, we can see how many of these things relate to what is going on. But the main battlefield is in your heart and my heart. That's the main battlefield.
There is a Navi that says, as we read it on the code, that Har HaZeitim is going to be split in half, and there's going to be. I mean, it sounds more than metaphorical. It sounds pretty.
That's right.
Devastating.
I mean, I've spoken to numerous Arabs who are completely convinced that there's going to be a huge earthquake in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And actually, if you already
earthquake.
Right in Har HaZeitim.
It's going to knock down the churches and knock down the.
No, but it's going to. The water is. These springs are coming out of the Har HaZeitim.
No, not out of the Temple Mount. Ramchal writes in Ramchal writes in the Secret of the Future Temple that the future Temple Mount is 3,000 cubits by 3,000 cubits. We know from Masechet Midas that the second temple was 500 by 500. And that means that the present Har HaBayis is going to be totally inadequate to accommodate the future temple, which has to be on the same spot. Rambam states categorically that the temple won't be anywhere else except on the place where Adam was formed, and where Noah sacrificed, where Abraham brought Isaac, and where Yaakov. It's got to be there, nowhere else. Well, now, already, if you look at the Har HaZeitim, If you've seen photo, you've seen photo. It's already split. On one side, to the south, is all of the kvarot of the cemetery, the Bet Almin.
Mount of
And
Olives.
to the north is all these monasteries and stuff. You know, those guys really did their homework because they positioned their tumas exact at any possible point where the Kohen who is doing the Parah Aduma, he has to be facing the eastern gate of the temple, and he's got to be able to see into the temple building while he. So they put their stuff there to make sure they're there already. Well, so it'll be very plausible that boom, that mountain's going to split and cause a huge demographic change, a huge geographic change in the land of that part of Jerusalem, and that's not going to happen without a big, like put it mildly, a shake-up. That's going to shake up everybody.
The actual Temple Mount will be different than where it is
Temple Mount will be expanded. It's 3,000 cubits by 3,000. That's
The Kodesh Baruch have to be the same place by
in
definition.
the same place, but for them.
Was it a mile by a mile?
But the actual site of the Eben Shasiya is not going to change. That's where it is.
Well, I'm not going to predict anything about that. Also, in the various places in the Zohar, you quoted Zechariah 14, which speaks about that, the Haftarah of the first day of Sukkot. But also in the Zohar in the end of Balak, it was widely quoted in 2001 because it says there that on the day of the beginning of the revelation of Moshiach, there were 3 big towers will fall in the great city of Rome. So there it also speaks about the land of Eretz Israel shifting by 45 miles. A big earthquake. I mean, that is enormous. I mean, who knows? It's certainly, it's very interesting that in the media today they invariably call, particularly Israel, they invariably call a major sort of political shock. They call it a Ridat Adama. It's a standard political comment, Ridat Adama, earthquake. So who knows? I mean, I think in front of our eyes we are seeing so many changes. I think one very good piece of news, there was a lot of fuss about 2 years ago now over something called the Megillat Starim, the hidden scroll of Reb Nachman of Breslov. There's a research scholar in Bar Ilan University by the name of Dr. Svi Mark, who claims to have deciphered a scroll that was kept hidden by the breast of a Hasidim, a copy of which was smuggled out of Russia in the early 1960s by Rabbi Gedalia Fleer when he was a young man and brought to Israel. And this is known as the Megillat Starim, which is a record coded of a long conversation that Nachman had in the year 1806 on the Yant of Yarizal, when he was in a carriage traveling across Ukraine with Rav Nassim and Rav Naftali about Seder Bias HaGoel Tzedek, the order in which the Redeemer will come. And it was all coded, and the rest of us, some tried to make out it had been lost. Rav Michal had this copy, and he gave it to Gedalia Fleer, took it to Israel, and found one of the rest of Hasidim in Yerushalayim who had come from Ukraine, who said that he knew the interpretation because he'd heard it. So whether this decipherment is accurate or not, it was published by Bar Ilan University Press, which I don't think would do such a thing rashly and without thinking about it, but they didn't just sort of give a shpanka to some rubbish. I mean, he obviously knows Rav Nachman's writings, so he has a completely different take on Moshiach. Which is,
what's the summary of the
summary is that Moshiach is a teenager who, through music and healing remedies, enchants the entire world. And Moshiach is all about what it's really about. It's about peace and love and kindness.
Why is that so different? I mean, why would he not be young when people realize?
Uman.
You know all the answers to all the questions. Maybe you're Mashiach.